A lot of times when you're recording audio tracks, you end up with blank segments of audio where the performer or the singer or drummer wasn't playing the instrument. However, the noise from that silent section isn't actually making it very silent. And what you can get is hum and hiss and background noise. And you could use something like a noise gate to eliminate those sections and make them truly silent. But I'm going to show you my favorite way of getting rid of those what are supposed to be silent sections. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to the drum folder, and I'm going to open that drum folder to reveal the tracks inside, and then I'm going to click and drag on the timeline to zoom in a bit, and you can see that we do have little sections in between each drum hit, but we don't want to remove any of those, or else we'd be changing the sound of the drums pretty radically. But the guitar tracks are quite a bit different. Let's close the drum folder and then go into the guitar folder, and you can see that there's quite a few segments where the guitarist wasn't playing at all, but in these sections is some hiss and noise from his guitar amp, and so we want to get rid of these what are supposed to be silent sections here, 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 and so forth. So I'm going to zoom out here a bit, and then I'm going to select one of those audio events to show you how to detect the silent sections on that track. So once that segment is selected, I'm going to go under the Audio pull-down menu and select the Advanced settings and then Detect Silence. And then this screen might look a little bit intimidating, but it's pretty easy to understand. What you have in the detection area are the threshold for when this detection opens and when it closes, very, very much like a noise gate or a compressor. So you're going to set in negative decibels where the gate is going to open and when it's going to close. So what I'm going to do on this guitar, since this is a pretty loud guitar track and it doesn't have a lot of dynamics, I'm going to increase either the open or closed threshold because they'll both be adjusted at the same time because the default linked selection is on. So when you adjust one, it adjusts the other. So I'm going to increase that to about 25 dB below zero. And now you'll notice that there are quite a bit more of these little lines in this window. And what those lines indicate are the segments that have audio in them and the silent sections or the almost silent sections where there isn't any actual audio information and just noise instead. So then we could come over here to the output settings, and you'll notice that we have 43 regions detected, and the strip silence button is on. So what I'm going to do is hit the process button and look at what happens in the project window. See how all of that formerly noisy area has now been removed because that noise was below the threshold setting. So I'm going to do that to all of these tracks very quickly. So I'm going to click and drag a box around all of these guitar tracks on those first 10 channels, or now it's 9 channels. And then I'm also going to do the same thing to these guitar solo tracks. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and draw a box around those to select all of the guitar solo tracks as well. And I also have a pickup down here. Oh, see, there's some more here, and there's some more here. So now I have all of those segments selected. Now I can go under the Audio pull-down menu and select Advanced and Detect Silence again. And with the exact same settings, I'm going to come over here and hit the Process button, and I'm going to just do this kind of rapid fire because it's going to go through all of those different segments and remove those what are supposed to be silent sections and strip out the silence. And again, you could use a noise gate for this, but I really like to use this method because it gives you a visual representation of where the silence is and where the audio is on the tracks. So now look at all of those audio events. It's much easier to see where the guitar is playing and where it isn't. But sometimes you do have to go in and make sure that you get rid of some of the little flubs. For example, right here, I'm going to click and drag down to zoom in on this little area, but I'm going to solo these guitar tracks at that particular point so we can listen to what's actually happening in this, what looks like it's supposed to be a blank area. See, there were some guitar string rattling around. So I'm going to just select those elements and hit the backspace key to get rid of them. And be aware that this stripping of silence doesn't permanently edit the audio files. if you did need to edit the beginning or ending of any of those elements, they're still in the audio file themselves because these audio events are just representations of the actual audio tracks that you've recorded. So you can go in and edit these segments after the fact if you so desire. That's the big advantage to a non-destructive editor, which is what Cubase is. It remembers all of your audio events even when you've cut them out of the project window. Now I'm going to perform that same stripping of silence from the vocal tracks. Now these are going to be a little bit more involved because the vocals are not nearly as loud as the guitar tracks, and there were lots of different takes recorded on these tracks. So in other words, if we were to open up this track and show the comping lanes, you can see that there were quite a few recordings of vocals that I did on these tracks before I got one that I wanted to keep here at the bottom. So in this stripping of silence, we're going to have quite a few more operations to strip the silence out of all the comping lanes as well. So the first thing I need to do is select all of the events. So I'm going to close up the comping lanes because by selecting an event that has comping lanes underneath it, it's going to select all of those recordings in the comping lanes. And to make sure that I grab all of the events on all of these tracks, there's a couple of different ways to do it. I'm going to hit Shift on my computer keyboard, and then while I'm holding Shift down, I'm going to type F, and that's going to give me a full view of all of the tracks. So I could just draw a box around the lead vocal and the two backup vocal tracks to select the events, or if you click the first track and then Shift-click the last track and then select all events, then it's going to select all of them. So now that we have all of those events on the tracks and the comping lanes selected, I can go under the audio window, select Advanced, and then detect silence. And since the vocal tracks are not nearly as loud as the guitar, I'm really going to drop these thresholds down. So I'm going to use something like -42 dB below zero as the open and closed threshold. And then I'm going to hit Process. And since I have so many of those events selected on the comping lanes, this is going to take a moment to go through and keep hitting the process button while it processes each and every one of those audio files and audio information in the comping lanes. And when we're done, we can look at all of the events that are left on those tracks. And you can see that there's a few little places where we probably have some clearing of throat or something like that. Let's solo this track and see what's happening on this particular event. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a throat clear. So you can still go through and just select those events and then hit your backspace or delete key on your computer keyboard and get rid of them. I'll bet you this is another one. Let's take a listen. Yep, clearing of the throat right there. So it's a good idea to visually go through and pull the segments out that are still supposed to be silent, like that one, that one, that one. So by using Detect Silence and Strip Silence, it's a really great way to go through and clean up your project window, along with removing all of the noise from parts of the recordings where there was supposed to be absolute silence.